A year-over-year increase of 4.9 was recorded in the Consumer Price Index (CPI) in April. Even though that's an improvement over last year, it's still not good. Compared to the Federal Reserve's inflation target, it's nearly twice as high. The reason why I'm laughing is because the month before, in March, the CPI came out at 5%. So, and now only went down 0.1% down in April, and yet you have the cronies like Jerome Powell and Grandma Janet Yellen who think this is great, this is reason to celebrate. That's no reason to celebrate at all. It only went down 0.1%. And as we all know, the books are the books are completely cooked, and there's nothing transparent or honest about these CPI numbers anyway. And in fact, you basically have to double, or some would even say triple, the official numbers to get a better idea of what's actually happening with prices. So if the government is saying that the Consumer Price Index is 4.9%, it's probably closer up to, I would say, in between 10 and 15%. And I think that's a better read on what Americans are struggling with. Do you feel that the government is lying to you? On the other hand, government officials don't have to lie about price inflation now because the CPI formula has been rigged to do the lying for them. The CPI formula understands price inflation significantly and is deeply flawed. In theory, the change in the total price of goods over time will give you an idea whether or not the prices in the economy are rising or declining. The Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates CPI by analyzing the price of a basket of goods. Now, there is no doubt, there is no question that the items the government chooses to include in that basket have a big impact on the final CPI number. Now, I want you to take a look at this way or understand it in this motion. A basket full of groceries filled by you and another basket filled by me cost very different amounts. Imagine if I filled my cart with expensive cuts of meat or poultry, and you fill yours with the store's buy one, get one items. According to the current formula, durable goods, say computers, cars, appliances, etc., account for 10.9% of the CPI. There is a 26.6% share of CPI devoted to non-durable goods, primarily food and energy. The remaining 62.5% of the basket is made up of services. Now this includes healthcare, rent, cell phone service, etc. The things the government includes and excludes from the basket can make a profound difference in the final CPI figure. Back in 1998, the government significantly revised the CPI metrics. The Bureau of Labor Statistics acknowledged that the changes had been sweeping. It was like adding less expensive items to the cart and telling us, hey, look, price inflation isn't so bad after all. And according to the BLS, periodic adjustments to the CPI calculations are necessary since consumers' preferences changed or new products and services emerged. These occasions required the Bureau to re-examine the CPI item structure, which is used to categorize the CPI market basket. There are many CPI processes that rely on the item structure. Now, there is nothing unreasonable about the BLS rationale. Nevertheless, it is easy to see how the process could be abused. It is easy for the government agency to manipulate the basket so that inflation looks better or worse than it actually is. Inflation is increasing the money supply, benefits the governments by supporting its borrow and spend policies, so it's easy to predict which way the bias will lean. Now, the Consumer Price Index, the CPI calculation has actually been adjusted multiple times throughout the decades by the BLS, including large adjustments into the 1980s and 1990s. Now, if we go back into 1998, the BLS followed the recommendations of the Boskins Commission, a Senate-appointed committee. The commission was originally called the Advisory Commission to the Study the Consumer Price Index, and it was tasked with looking into possible bias in the computation of the CPI. The study found that the index overstated inflation by about 1.1 per year in 1996 and about 1.3 prior to 1996. By ensuring that the formula consistently produced a smaller number, 1998's changes to CPI were intended to address this issue. The government essentially cooked the books in effect. As a result, it is virtually impossible to compare CPI today with, say, CPI back in the 1970s and 1980s. It would be like trying to compare apples to oranges or, say, a car to a truck. Now, CPI charts are based on older formulas, are available now on ShadowStats. So I encourage you to go to ShadowStats and check this out for yourself. Now, according to ShadowStats, CPI is currently around 12% based on the 1980 alternative CPI formula. Now, the BLS can manipulate CPI data in other ways than changing the formula. This calculation incorporated geometric weighting, substitution, and all of these measures are subjective. By subjective, I mean that the government number crunchers make them up. The government can create a formula that outputs whatever it wants by manipulating the numbers in the formula. As governments continue to lie and be dishonest and disingenuous about true inflation, I have continued to increase my holdings in safe haven assets like gold and silver, and I will continue this course of action as I have lost all faith when it comes to governments being honest and transparent with their citizens. What is your course of action going to be? Let me know.